Welcome Jacquie Jordan, Emmy-nominated television producer, author of Get on TV, and the recent book Heartfelt Marketing, Allowing the Universe to Be Your Business Partner, founder of TVGuestpert.com.
I'm Jacquie Jordan, presented here by TVGuestpert.com on AM 1290, News Press Radio Santa Barbara, and Sony's Blip Television. Today, join me for a very fascinating conversation because we are going to be talking about the media's fascination with murder trials. And today is the release of HLN news anchors Jane Velez-Mitchell's new book, Exposed: The Secret Life of Jodi Arias. Also this hour, we're going to talk to media psychiatrist Dr. Carole Lieberman, author of Bad Girls, Why Men Love Them and How Good Girls Can Learn Their Secrets. Dr. Carole Lieberman has been front and center of many of these media trials throughout the years, and I've known her from my producing experiences. And finally, we're going to wrap the show up with veteran news producer Jay Jones. I know him from my time at Geraldo, and he and I worked on the O.J. Simpson murder trial. And we're going to find out from him why the media is so fascinated by these stories. And he is hot off the trail of the most recent kidnapping of Hannah Anderson coming out of San Diego. So we'll talk to him later this hour. But joining us is Jane Velez-Mitchell from HLN. Well, Jane, congratulations and welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Listen, with all the time that you have, what was it about this particular murder trial that fascinated you so much to write a book? Because a book is a big undertaking.
It is. I was there in Phoenix covering the trial. I was standing outside the courthouse morning till night. I was in the courtroom. And what I started to notice is that, first of all, I was convinced that Jodi Arias was lying under oath. And then as I talked to Travis Alexander, the victim's friends, as they were going in and out of court, I was getting other stories that contradicted what she said on the stand. But none of those contradictions got into the trial before the jurors. So obviously the prosecution can be precluded because things are overly prejudicial, etc. I'm not constrained by those kinds of limitations. So I decided to tell Travis Alexander's story because he's not allowed to speak for himself.
And you had the sniffer right from the get-go that she wasn't telling the truth.
Oh, yeah. I mean, the woman's a pathological liar. Pretty much what I found is everything she said on the stand assumed the exact opposite. So it's one of the most challenging cases for me. I've written 3 other books, but this was agonizing because she's a really, really gifted liar. She takes a real event that we all know happened, and then she weaves lies on top of it and blends it. So it's really hard to see where the lies end and the truth begins. But we try to deconstruct most of what she said, because remember, she tried to put the victim on trial. So in Exposed, The Secret Life of Jodi Arias, which is the new book out today, what I do is I go through all of her claims, and actually I've come up with some stunning new information that never came up in the trial. And one biggie is that she stalked another boyfriend years earlier, just the same way she stalked Travis, but unfortunately Travis died.
Yes, unfortunately. And so you've really basically advocating his story by writing this book, which is fantastic.
I'm seeking the truth, so I'm not going to paint him as a complete saint, but he was the victim. That's the key here. She tried to paint herself as the victim and essentially accuse him of a bunch of things, like being a pedophile and being a sexual deviant, that were simply not true. And so we're setting the record straight. Let the chips fall where they may.
And as the host of Issues, what is it about murder trials that captivate us as viewers? Because they're very fast. I mean, we went through the Zimmerman trial.
I was down there for that. Was right there.
And that hit a whole racial nerve, a cultural nerve. There were a lot of layers in that. You know, my experience, I worked on with Geraldo on the O.J. Simpson trial. There's just a fascination. What is it that is so compelling is it the stories? Because I know with Jodi Arias,
one of the things is that a courtroom is one of the few venues in our society where you get to see how people really behave behind closed doors. And so you hear things that people don't tell their psychiatrist or their best friend or their parents. And so you really get to see life in all its rawness. And that's what we saw in the Jodi Arias trial, even though she lied on the stand. There were a lot of things that were just indisputable, like the photos of them in sexual positions, naked, right before she killed him. The photos of him in the shower moments before she killed him, and the killing in progress in inadvertent photos that were taken by the camera that she tried to destroy. And luckily, thanks to some great detective work, those photos were recovered. So we're getting to see life in all of its ugliness.
There's been some, big female murder trials in the past couple of years with the Casey Anthony, Amanda Fox, Jodi Arias, and they have that kind of sexual deviant, double-sided. You don't really know who the real person is. Femme fatale, as at least in real life characters.
Yeah, in my book, Exposed, I really show that Jodi Arias is what they call in Hollywood a shapeshifter. She starts out and she presents one way, which is a demure, beautiful, articulate, well-spoken, well-dressed, intelligent young woman. And then she gradually starts changing. And I got this from so many of Travis's friends about how she morphed into another person before their very eyes and began exhibiting very creepy behavior, extreme jealousy, eavesdropping, paranoia. I mean, just runs the gamut. And that's because she suffers from borderline personality disorder. And she has a very weak, shaky sense of identity. So what she does is she tries to attach herself to somebody and really assume their identity. And she did that with an ex-wife of one of her boyfriends, where she really mimicked this woman, and it creeped people in that inner circle, really creeped them out. And then, of course, the stalking for her earlier boyfriend and the stalking of Travis. It's all part of the same theme. It's, I don't know who I am. I'm going to attach myself to somebody else, make their life my life, and that will make me feel like I have an identity. And when that person ultimately rejects them, then they feel like, I don't know who I am, and they become very panicked and very rageful.
I think unlike Amanda Knox and Casey Anthony's verdicts, I think when the Jodi Arias verdict came out, I think that a lot of people really felt that she got what she deserved. There was I saw it come right in on the news feed. I saw it come in on Facebook. People were commenting all over the place on Twitter. People really felt that she got what she wanted.
She's going to get, because the penalty phase of the trial hasn't happened yet. On Monday, there's going to be a hearing. And so that's why I think this book is perfectly timed if people want to follow the rest of this case, because they're going to decide on Monday when they're going to have the retrial on the penalty phase to determine whether she lives or dies by lethal injection. So if you want to really follow that case, because people say it's going to be a mini trial, and of course if she takes the stand, that means a maxi trial, because she was on the stand for 18 days the last time. It's going to be fascinating, but you really have to know. You have to know what happened before, and this book is definitive. It tells the definitive story.
Well, Jane, thank you so much for being here. Exposed: The Secret Life of Jodi Arias. And you can also see Jane on Issues with Jane Velez-Mitchell on HLN. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much. Enjoyed it. Bye.
Bye-bye. And when we come back, we've got Dr. Carole Lieberman, psychiatrist, media psychiatrist, who's also spent a lot of her time as an expert witness on many of these stories. Carole is also the author of the book Bad Girls, and she also did a book on bad boys, and she's going to tell us why those books are so alluring when we come back.
Well, you only need the light when it's burning low. Only miss the sun when it starts to snow. Only know you.
Alex Detail was a child genius who saved the world from the evil harvesters. But a decade later, this mysterious alien force has returned, and Alex is no longer a prodigy. Now, in order to save the world again, he must survive his kidnapping, fight his evil clone, and get his ship to the planet Pluto, where he will uncover the universe's ultimate power. Alex Detail's Revolution, a thrilling new novel by Darren Campo. Buy online or wherever books are sold.
This segment was brought to you by CX2wristband.com. That's CX2wristband.com, where you can get drug-free relief from drug-free pain patches, drug-free sleep patches, and other drug-free products for allergies, sleep, energy, and pain. These little drug-free stickers work on the body's meridians like acupuncture without the needles. CX2wristband.com has the most powerful energy wristband in the world. Just go to CX2wristband.com.
Welcome back. I'm Jackie Jordan here on the Industry Show with the Experts. And joining us now is Dr. Carole Lieberman, media psychiatrist and author of 2 books, one Bad Girls and the other one Bad Boys. Carole, thank you so much for joining us. How are you?
Fine, thank you. Good to be here, Jackie.
Thrilled to have you here. So we just spoke with HLN anchor Jane Velez-Mitchell about her new book in the Jodi Arias case. What is the media's fascination with these murder trials? And you have a very unique experience to these type of stories.
Yes, as both a media analyst, a media psychiatrist, and as an expert witness, a psychiatric expert witness. Really, this all started with the OJ case. Back then, people became so fascinated with the case, they tuned in every day. And of course, the media realized that this was a ratings bonanza. And so it's, people got carried away with it because it was like a soap opera. You never really knew what was going to happen from day to day. And so since then, the media has followed lots of other trials that have, especially trials that have combinations of sex and violence. That's what Freud discovered 100 years ago were our basic drives, aggressiveness, not necessarily violence, and sex, of course. And so when trials have this combination, they are especially, titillating.
Well, that's what I was just saying to Jane Velez-Mitchell is, you had Jodi Arias, Amanda Fox, Casey Anthony. You have these like femme fatale, some sort of, distorted sexual perversion was somewhere mixed into the actual trials. It ties into what you write about in your book, Bad Girls. I think that's why there is, and even with the O.J. Simpson trial, which I was a producer at Geraldo at the time that trial was going on, there were elements of there were all sorts of characters and you weren't really sure who had a relationship with who at a different time. They really do play out with soap, like soap operas. But these are real people and there's murder victims involved.
Yes, with the Jodi Arias trial, I was talking about how she fits into one of my 12 types of bad girls that I write about. The bad girl scorned. She was such a classic example of that because here she murdered her boyfriend when at the very time when she realized he was really going to abandon her. There was sort of no way back. He had broken it off earlier, but she kept trying to win him back through sex. And at this point, when he was about to go on a vacation with some new woman, she realized this was the end. And that's what bad girls scorn do. They stalk the guy, when they see that the guy's going to break up with them. And so they stalk him for a while, try to get him back. And when it becomes hopeless, they take revenge. And in her case, her revenge was murder.
Yeah, it seems like there's a childhood wound, a codependency, something that, gets triggered in abandonment and rejection, and their acting out behavior in those moments is murder, which is, to the absolute extreme. As a psychiatrist, you must deal with a lot of these type of behaviors, but not obviously to the extreme of murder.
Well, sometimes that too. But yes, it all starts, like all the bad girls, but it all starts with the girl's relationship with her father, which of course never really came out very much in the trial. We didn't really, and that was a mistake on the part of the defense. I'm not sure that anything could have worked to get her, certainly to get her acquitted. I don't know that there would have been anything. But the defense should have presented more about her childhood and her childhood wounds and about, what it was that her boyfriend triggered in her. Obviously, some kind of memories of rejection and abandonment from her father. So they should have at least gone into that more. Again, though, there was so much against her that I'm not really sure that would have helped. But now the sentencing is going to be, the jury deadlocked and the sentencing is going to be coming up again. That would be something good for them to go into to make her more sympathetic.
Well, that's exactly what another famous media murder trial with the Menendez brothers. Their defense played that sympathetic card because when it came out the Menendez brothers, you found out, the father was really abusive. He pushed them really, really hard. He was a really tough father. So they took that with the defense. Obviously, they're still in jail. They didn't get the death penalty, which is what Jodi Arias is up for this past Monday. Carole, we're going to take a quick commercial break. I'd love for you to stay with us and also tell us about your current venture, if you could. And also, later this hour, we've got veteran news producer Jay Jones coming up, who has been also behind the scenes on many of these stories. When we come back, thank you.
Alex Detail was a child genius who saved the world from the evil harvesters. But a decade later, this mysterious alien force has returned, and Alex is no longer a prodigy. Now, in order to save the world again, he must survive his kidnapping, find his evil clone, and get his ship to the planet Pluto, where he will uncover the universe's ultimate power. Alex Detail's Revolution, a thrilling new novel by Darren Campo. Buy online or wherever books are sold.
This segment was brought to you by CX2wristband.com. That's CX2wristband.com, where you can get drug-free relief from drug-free pain patches, drug-free sleep patches, and other drug-free products for allergies, sleep, energy, and pain. These little drug-free stickers work on the body's meridians like acupuncture without the needles. CX2wristband.com has the most powerful energy wristband in the world. Just go to CX2wristband.com.
When enemies are at your door, I'll carry you away from more if you need.
I'm Jackie Jordan here, presented by TVGuestspert.com on AM 1290, Santa Barbara News Press Radio, and Sony's Blip Television. So we're talking in the middle of the conversation with Dr. Carole Lieberman, media psychiatrist. Jodi Arias she goes to, we're going to get the penalty phase, happens this Monday. And, so Jane Velez-Mitchell was just explaining what was going to happen, and there was other secrets to it. But what I did notice was that when the first verdict was read and came up, a lot of people were very happy about it. There was people, to me, watch these murder trials like they watch sports. They're like,
there is something like that. Yeah, rooting for the two sides, the two different teams, right?
Like Casey Anthony, people were devastated with that verdict. I mean, people were...
I wasn't one of them. I was one of the few people in America who was very pleased with that verdict because for two things. One, I didn't think that the prosecution really provided presented their case in a way that was very convincing. They really didn't have enough evidence. And also, I thought that it didn't go in, again, to the father enough. It's always the fathers. The
Menendez brothers is totally my point. The Menendez brothers. It was the father that made, it was the father. That's where it came down to.
That's right. And so, I believed, and I still believe, her story that she was abused by her father. Not that if she did commit the murder, we don't know that, but not that would excuse it if in fact they had proven that she had committed the murder. But I think there was more to the story in regard to the father, and that really, I think that was part of the verdict too, because I think that the jurors knew that there was something missing, that they hadn't gotten the whole story.
Well, I got very close to the murder trial myself when I was producing at Geraldo and then at Maury for both daytime television, and I was involved in, these murder court shows made court TV when there was a court TV around. And the story that I worked closely on was the Rod Farrell case, who was the vampire cult killer. He was the teenager who had fangs, and he had a little vampire cult, and they sucked blood, and he bludgeoned to death one of the girl's parents that was in his little cult, and then they took off cross state. Uh-huh. He was the youngest person to get the death penalty in the state of Florida, which has since changed their law. So now he has life because he was 16 at the time of the murder. And I personally, because it was so close, and I went down there and I met him. I took Maury Povich down there. We went to death row. I've never had an experience like that where I, was in a prison of that nature. And I saw this scared little boy child who had given himself fangs to look all tough and scary. And the truth was, he's also was a victim of, abuse in the home, and it doesn't make their end result at all right. But wow, it's all an enmeshed tragedy when you really break it apart. And I don't always know if those things come out in the trial the way they should.
Yes, well, of course, that's part of the job of a good psychiatric expert witness. When I testify in trials, I never testify just about whatever the issue is at hand. I always go back to the person's birth or even before, what they inherited and so on from their family, and trace their whole life to put it in context. I know it's very sad, especially when you see, some of these teenagers commit heinous crimes. Like there was just a crime of an Australian baseball player who was shot at random by 3 kids who said they were bored. Yes, there must be some abuse and all kinds of horrible things in their background, and obviously an addiction to video games, violent video games. But still, it is really sad that no one intervenes to help these people before they get to the point of thinking that life isn't worth living, and so they might as well do whatever. It just feels good at the moment. That's part of our fascination too with these kinds of trials, that killing, it's the ultimate crime against humanity. And so we're fascinated to understand who could have crossed over, who could have gone to the dark side enough to be willing to kill somebody.
And Carole, you say that there's, I have to admit I am fascinated by the other one that's happening in South Africa. With the
Arias.
Yes. That, and I think the reason that's caught my attention is it's, someone who overcame a personal challenge, became a national hero, has everything. He is he's living every man's dream. He's got the supermodel girlfriend, fiance, and then you're like, huh? She was found dead in the bathroom?
Yes, and there's no question in my mind anyway that he did it, and he knew who he was shooting at, because it was Valentine's Day. She supposedly had gotten a text or an email from this other guy, or she texted this other guy. And really what I think it comes down to is that when he was born with this congenital deformity in his limbs, lacking full limbs, legs, he felt, even though he has Olympic medals and all that and wealth and everything, he really doesn't feel like enough of a man. He feels like a woman, especially a supermodel and someone, she had all kinds of other accomplishments, that she wouldn't really want to be with him for the long run. That maybe she was with him to get the fame of being, the attention of being his girlfriend, but he didn't really believe that any woman would want to be with him for the long run because he wasn't enough of a man. And I think he felt really vulnerable on Valentine's Day that she was going to leave him, and he just got enraged.
There's that big old gaping abandonment wound or rejection wound. Let me just say, I think there's other ways to cope with those wounds other than murder. Dr. Carole, thank you so much for joining us. Dr. Carole is the author of Bad Girls and also the author of Bad Boys, and you can also check her out at tvguestspert.com. We have veteran news producer Jay Jones, who is actually hot off the most recent kidnapping story, murder story out of San Diego, the Hannah Anderson story. We'll talk to Jay in just a moment.
So lately, been wondering who will be there to take my place.
Alex Detail was a child genius who saved the world from the evil harvesters. But a decade later, this mysterious alien force has returned, and Alex is no longer a prodigy. Now, in order to save the world again, he must survive his kidnapping, fight his evil clone, and get his ship to the planet Pluto, where he will uncover the universe's ultimate power. Alex Detail's Revolution, a thrilling new novel by Darren Campo. Buy online or wherever books are sold.
This segment was brought to you by CX2wristband.com. That's CX2wristband.com, where you can get drug-free relief from drug-free pain patches, drug-free sleep patches, and other drug-free products for allergies, sleep, energy, and pain. These little drug-free stickers work on the body's meridians like acupuncture without the needles. CX2wristband.com has the most powerful energy wristband in the world. Just go to CX2wristband.com.
Welcome back. I'm Jackie Jordan, presented here by TVGuestspert.com. You can find us on Facebook at TVGuestspert.com or Twitter at Jack Jordan. Joining us now is veteran news producer and an old friend and colleague of mine, Jay Jones. Jay, thank you so much for joining us.
You're very welcome, Jackie. Hi, how are you?
Great to have you here. So early in the show, I got to, I already, busted the fact that we worked together at Geraldo, and we worked on, as far as I'm concerned, one of the biggest mass murder trials of the century, which was the O.J. Simpson trial. We also, covered around a lot of the John Bonet Ramsey that was going on. Overall, what do you think is the media's fascination with murder trials? What's your take on it? Because you're in the trenches with this.
Many of these stories have a lot of legs to them. It either comes out in the O.J. trial, like sex or nuttiness. In the Jodi Arias trial, there was that danger factor, that pure evil. This was a woman who wouldn't, listen to her attorneys. Her attorneys end up not seeing eye to eye, even though they did the best job they could to protect her. Things seem to really roll out like blockbuster movies. You have attractive women with the use of high tech and social media. You have pictures on Facebook, you have tweeting, you have a lot of interaction that normally you wouldn't have maybe 4 or 5 years ago, 10 years for sure. Like during the O.J. trial, no one was tweeting out photos or talking to the juror, not the jurors, but talking to attorneys or talking to lawyers and so forth. But now, even with the Trayvon Martin trial, before the trial even got its legs and got started, there was an interview live on Fox News. So these aspects have these high-profile trials right in the face of the public, right in the face of the media, and we're just eating it up. Numbers are going up, businesses exposed, growing, T-shirts are being made. It's fascinating to us, and we get excited about it. Unfortunately, we get excited about someone else's pain, but it becomes great stuff of movies, and in the case of Jane Velez-Mitchell, a great book in which she went to the friends of Jodi Arias and found out what type of woman this was, to her childhood friends, her grandmother, and really dug into what made her tick, what made this woman turned out to be so dangerous, such a liar, such a manipulator. And it's just mind-boggling. And in addition to that, there was the opposite end, this Mormon, gentlemanly soul.
Yes,
it
definitely she had the demure Mormon thing, so, what she was doing seemed unthinkable to who she was presenting herself to be. Absolutely.
And then we have this case that just happened here, like the Hannah Anderson case. How intriguing is that? You have a guy, a 40-year-old. It's almost like I hate to do this because I'm a guy, like a creep fest. It's almost like slimy men are the trends and making for great stories. So you have this 40-year-old middle-aged man taking this 16-year-old girl. Evidently he kidnapped her. Then he kills her brother and her mother, blows up the apartment, lights it on fire, and then they drive to the backwoods of some wilderness where they have to, SWAT or the FBI can't even get to them without using a helicopter and hiking for 2 hours. It's just unreal, but this stays on the headlines time and time again, which is great. It's a great spin for if you have physicians, doctors, lawyers, experts, people who have insight who can talk about these stories and talk about the slime factor, the sex factor, the nuttiness factor, the danger factor. All these are elements that make for great, interest.
Well, I also think, because you've been literally in the news trenches over the last week or so with the Hannah Anderson story, and I think where part of the fascination with these murder trials, murder stories comes out is, like, I think we're going to see in the Hannah Anderson is there's more details that are going to be revealed, that this wasn't a straightforward kidnapping. I mean, it's already starting to sniff something like maybe she was complicit in it on some maybe even naive level, or maybe even not so naive level. So, I don't think the story is there yet, but because more facts and details emerge, it keeps these stories alive much longer. I mean, their shelf life, can run quite a bit.
That's a great point, because I went over to the Hannah had this welcome home at this restaurant, home of the half-pound steak burgers, and it was packed with so many people, and she just kind of jumped out of a car with these neon green glasses and just ran in and shunned the media and ran out. And I was talking to some of my friends in the media, and we're starting to say, I wonder if she knew more than she seems to be letting on. Her ace in the hole is that she's able to say to the FBI that DiMaggio took the first shot. So that's like, okay, because, you know, she ends up, she lives, he dies, FBI goes in, does their job. But now we're thinking, wait a minute, she's 16, she's not that young, she's smart enough to know what's going on.
She's known him her whole life.
Exactly. And the funny thing about it is even the father was like, this was my, not to say BFF, but this was my best friend.
Yeah.
And I never saw anything strange or abnormal, which is, I mean, it's hard to believe. You know, it's really hard to believe that's the case. So the other day there was a car wash for her. Again, she comes in, she runs out. They're protecting her. They don't want her to go anywhere near the media and say the wrong thing. So the spin on that is the quiet we keep her, maybe we'll forget about it as other stories take the headline, but no way. She looks like me. She was also another one. Tweets, social media, Facebook, I'm okay. This is what deserves to happen. I wish I can do this. You know, in all due respect, she's, you know, may her parents rest in peace. She wishes it was her instead of her brother. We get that. So we get the sympathy factor, but now we're just not buying that she is 100% innocent, like you were saying. And that's what we're expecting more to come out with this case, with this story, that there is more to it than meets the eye.
And there was a strange money transfer that DiMaggio did, passing his money on. So there's, you know, so it just seems like there's more, you know, more to the story. And I think it's really interesting, Jay, for someone like yourself who is a veteran news producer who has been on the scene for many, many cases, that when the news people get together, all of you start sniffing. And that's exactly what Jane Velez-Mitchell said earlier in the show, is that she said when she was covering the Jodi Arias case, she was outside the courtroom going, this isn't adding up. I don't believe the girl. So it's really interesting how, as you know, as newsmen, newsmakers, you're sniffing out something that is not adding up, and I think that's just a really interesting point to bring up here. It's not just, you know, it's not just these stories stay alive. It's literally, as news people, you're going, this isn't making sense. And I think that with Hannah here, you're already saying that.
Yeah. In this case, it's like 1 and 1 = 5. So we're like, no, this doesn't work. You know, why are there so many questions? And that money trail is totally interesting. So all of a sudden she gets, you know, 6 digits, she's in the money. How did that even happen? Why? You know, and that's what, as journalists, and you know this too, producers, journalists, newsmakers, and so forth, we're always asking the 5 W's, and why is the top of our list. And also, I always tell the media, I mean, I love the media, but you can't believe everything you read and hear, so you're constantly digging. There has to be more. And until Hannah speaks out, she's always going to be suspect. Until she sits down with you, me, you know, some network correspondent, some hour-long show, she's always going to be suspect. And we're not letting this die. We're not letting this die in any other case. And even though...
It's a zeitgeist case. It's got a zeitgeist element in the way, because you bring up the technology, because it was this story that did the Southern California Amber Alerts on the cell phone. You know, so you brought up the whole bringing in, you know, social media to it. You know, I was one of the people who was woken up at 3:30 in the morning on Los Angeles because there was a kidnapping that might have been between Canada and Texas. I was like, okay, what am I supposed to do about this right now at 3:30 in the morning? Stand out on the 405, which I would have been happy to, had there been a realistic, like, call to action, but Canada to Texas. So, you know, again, this is one of those, as you pointed out, we're kind of swept into these stories, whether we know it or not, you know, not just through television. We're talking about it here through social media, through the technology. So I think that's just a really interesting point, and that certainly has legs to it. Jay, let me ask you to stick around because we're going to take a commercial break here. And
Absolutely.
When we come back, I want to hear some of also just, you know, some of your favorite cases that you, or stories that you've been a part of in your news career. So stay with us. We'll be right back.
I will wait for you.
Alex Detail was a child genius who saved the world from the evil harvesters. But a decade later, this mysterious alien force has returned, and Alex is no longer a prodigy. Now, in order to save the world again, he must survive his kidnapping, fight his evil clone, and get his ship to the planet Pluto, where he will uncover the universe's ultimate power. Alex Detail's Revolution, a thrilling new novel by Darren Campo. Buy online or wherever books are sold.
This segment was brought to you by CX2wristband.com. That's CX2wristband.com, where you can get drug-free relief from drug-free pain patches, drug-free sleep patches, and other drug-free products for allergies, sleep, energy, and pain. These little drug-free stickers work on the body's meridians like acupuncture without the needles. CX2wristband.com has the most powerful energy wristband in the world. Just go to CX2wristband.com.
I'm Jackie Jordan. Welcome back to the Industry Show with the experts, and we're talking about the media's fascination with murder and murder trials. And joining us with us now is my friend, colleague, and veteran news producer Jay Jones, who's been on the scene for many of these stories. So, Jay, what are some of the murder cases that you've been a part of that have made an impact on you, or that you really remember, stood out for you?
Well, I mean, murder cases and other cases in general, Trayvon had me going because that as a journalist, that allowed for a lot of legs. It was a 911 case. At first it was a race issue. It was a great mother with a love for her child. Actually, it was two sets of parents with a love for their child. So that was fascinating. Then it was this law about, standing your ground and what that meant. So day after day, that became very interesting to the nation, and it kind of also sucked us in. Now there's a case right here in San Diego, which is really becoming bizarre. It doesn't have the murder aspect, but it has the money aspect, it has the sex aspect, and it even has terminology, which is filthy filner. Now this guy has 16 accusers, accusing him of sexual harassment. That's one thing. But now he wants the city to pay for his charges. He won't resign. He won't step down. This story has become the mockery and the laughter and the butt of all jokes from coast to coast. So that's really bringing us in. Like, no one, even the headlines are funny. The headlines today was like, really? He won't step down? It's like a conversation you have with your 10-year-old. So that in itself is really, really exciting. But I think, cases like this all started, as far as I can remember, and it probably goes back before that, with the OJ case. It's the OJ case that really kicked off, it seems like, a lot of the media obsession. And then, now stations like, In Session, HLN, they're dedicated to stories. I was watching a story this morning, Andrea Snyder, live, on air, why she shouldn't die. I mean, you see the emotions, you see the orange jumpsuit, you see the eyes on her. Cameras are right in her face, doing slow creeping push-ups. Pushing. So it's like, whoa, I feel you. Another case, which is unreal as well, which was the case in Cleveland. Can you believe some guy,
Yes.
mid-age?
Ariel Castro. Yes, the Ariel Castro. That is, because that is as creepy as it gets. That is everybody's worst nightmare. It's every woman's worst nightmare. It's every parent's worst nightmare to have that happen. And that's, to me, that story quieted down quite fast. The trial came up fast. And maybe because there was no there. It was like we knew he did it, and no matter what he said about it, he did it, and he deserves, a big penalty. I think maybe there was just a collective, quick agreement that this was, is as sick as it is, and there's no other way. But that story, like, from a trial perspective in the media, like, peaked, was put in its place pretty fast. Didn't drag on, but that is a really, really twisted story, and it's everyone's worst nightmare. That next door to you, that could be going on.
Exactly. And and what's happening is, well, two things happen. There's a part where there's a survivor, or in that case, there was survivor. All the women made it out. They seem okay. So that's kind of good news. So
that makes it happen. But yeah, that case just blew up because the imagination almost runs wild with that one. You know, there were babies, there was abusive sex, there was chains, there was, you know, bondage and just all kind of weirdness. So they got rid of the house, they got rid of the man, they just threw away the key, quick, fast, in a hurry. There was no legal system that can help them out. But then what happens with some of these cases is once the justice is done, people still kind of complain. They go, oh, the laws were followed, but was there justice? In that case, I think everybody agrees this guy was a creep, so justice was done. But in the Trayvon case, they seem to say, oh, the law was followed to the you know, the I was dotted and the T's were crossed, but was justice done, especially after the jurors started coming out post-trial, post-verdict, and saying, oh, now I should have said George Zimmerman got away with murder. It's like, what? More legs, more traction, more media, you know, interest. And that keeps these things going for 14 weeks, 15 weeks, 19 weeks. So it's almost worth the buck from the media standpoint and from branding, you know, as far as being an investigator or cable, which says, I'm going to stay on this through it out. And now they're creating jurors, they're making stands, they're just doing all the elements to teach you and I and everybody else about how the law works, but does it work for your benefit? So that's what keeps it interesting. I hear background noise.
You know, it's really interesting because, and I've caught myself on this, and I think it's a subtlety, but I'm just going to point it out. Some people refer to it as the Trayvon Martin case. Other people have referred to it as the Zimmerman case. And then we talk about the Jodi Arias.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I get a little bit of feedback there.
I know, okay.
Is that what is they blowing leaves outside?
I know, I'm going to move.
We'll just do it. It's okay. We can do we'll do an edit here. I'll throw up a picture of Trayvon Martin and Zimmerman. Get yourself in a good place here.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to do. There's something's outside my.
We might also just go a little bit over to. Yeah, to cover that bad audio. Go to the bathroom.
Okay, I'm gonna close the window if I could. Yeah. Is it still poor?
Yeah, that's sounding much better.
Okay. Master bedroom.
Yeah, that's totally fine. Just speak loudly into your phone camera because we kind of lost you there as well.
All right.
It almost sounded like you had your thumb over the microphone.
Yeah, it sounded like you had your thumb on the microphone in that last little beat you did. Okay. So, you know, I'm going to just point out what I thought is an interesting subtlety, and I don't know if it's part of the racial aspect around it. I even caught myself saying it because I referred to it as a Zimmerman trial. You referred to it as the Trayvon Martin trial. I've seen it both ways in the media. I know that with Jodi Arias, of course, it's the Jodi Arias trial. We don't hear much about you know, Travis Alexander's name other than the boyfriend, the ex-boyfriend, the victim. And I just thought that was a very unique subtlety that at least eyewitness is attached to the Trayvon Martin Zimmerman murder trial in the news. The other thing that what I think was really interesting was that Casey Anthony got off, and people were really shocked by that story, and and there's a curiosity now about how she's putting her life together or not. Did you think that justice was done there?
My opinion was no. I thought she was going to be found guilty of murdering the child. I guess I was rooting for that type of outcome. That made me wonder also, that was one of those cases where, okay, what's going on here? Is it the price of defense that can get you off now? If you can afford a great attorney, if you can afford, the best of the best defense, then you win. I was with some attorneys today, just a few minutes ago. They go, you know what? I'm a high-priced call girl. I'm a high-priced gigolo. For the price is right, I don't care. I'll get you off. I mean, several attorneys say that often. I mean, I shouldn't put it out there like that. But
I appreciate you saying. I appreciate you saying, and I think that's I think everybody feels that's the truth of it. That's the reality of it. So it's actually refreshing to hear that.
We were in the green room having a conversation because, you know, I'm there, I'm in it, just like you were saying, and we were talking about the latest, greatest, I mean, you know, the mayor of San Diego, and it doesn't matter. It's like, as long as it's not, and a lot of people feel that way too. That's why it's also fascinating. As long as it's not my child trapped in that basement, as long as it's not my child, unfortunately, who was duct taped and buried under the ground, unfortunately, it's not my child that was, you know, brutally stabbed and murdered, then for the audience to digest it, they can take it. But so as soon as you cross that line and it's your baby, believe me, just like the stop and frisk that's going on in New York, all the profiling.
Yes.
As soon as someone, you know, messes with you and say, hold it, stop, Jay Jones, let me frisk your bag, then I'm like, I'm up in arms. You know, there's a new law that's coming out now, like if you get pulled over with your cell phone for texting or talking on it, the officer in California is allowed to take your phone, and let's say he saw you 5 minutes, you know, the time he spotted you speeding until the time he finished talking to you is a time span of 20 minutes. He's allowed to take your phone and check the texts or calls in between.
I've had that happen.
time.
I have had that happen. Even before the law, I've been pulled over and he asked to check my phone registry. I almost fell over backwards. I was in a rental car outside LAX. He asked to see my phone log because he wanted to see if I was either phoning and driving or texting and driving. So I've already had that experience. So it's quite wild. This is a wild ride. Bringing it back to the murder trials, you know what? My other observation is that the state of Florida, the justice system, even from going back to presidential election voting, or whatever goes on in courts in the state of Florida, God help me, may I never have to be involved in the state of Florida in any of their court systems, because I'm not really sure justice is really served there.
All the craziness, unfortunately, points to the south of the South Panhandle. I mean, you know, there's only one thing I like about Florida, and that's, you know, So Be or South Beach. But other than that, you're right. I will not want to be in court, in trial in Florida, or have something happen to me, because it is bad.
It just seems that way. It seems like whatever comes out of the courtrooms in Florida is going to spin your head, you know, head on a swivel. You're going to be like, did that work out right? Yes.
I mean, a lot of these cases go unsolved. Like, you know, so Casey walks. So who killed the baby? I mean, what happened?
Right. Totally.
Okay, walks. So who killed these two people? Somebody did.
When I was producing news with you at the time, I also worked on the missing baby Sabrina. I don't know if anybody else in the world remembers that story, but it was a missing baby from Florida, just taken out of the crib in the middle of the night. And the parents were under excruciating investigation. They were looked at, and then, you know, it just quieted down. And like you said, well, where did the baby go? Did they find the baby? And in regards to that story, a tape surfaced several years later of a birthday party with a girl that looked like it could have been her. So it's just funny, but like you said, well, if Casey Anthony didn't murder the baby, you know, Kylie, I think it was Kaylee, then who did? You know, who did murder the baby? And yeah, where does that go? Do us as news producers have a responsibility to keep following up on that? Like, it's funny because we make news and we react to news both in the same way.
Well, you know, with the information highway, you kind of want to do more on it, but once the interest dips and you're the boss and saying, listen, move to the next story or stay on it, that's what really determines it. You kind of, you know, you care about the victims, you care about the person who loses their life, but sometimes in this game that we play called news, you got to keep it moving. You just have to keep it moving. I was having a conversation this morning. GMA, Today Show producers. I was outside Filner. They were like, do you think we're covering Filner because there's nothing else going on? And so you feel like at some point you're saturated with the same stories, but you want to keep it moving. But that's the numbness that you get as you kind of become a craftsman in this business of journalism. Outside of it, though, if it was like the John Walshes of the world,
yes.
you keep digging.
Yes.
You're relentless. You never stop, caring because it happened to you. But to us, and you're just outside and you're doing a job, hey, you're thinking about, I want to go on vacation. I want to go home. I want a hot meal. I want to do something, even though you do everything in your power when you're on to cover that story, get the facts right, keep asking the why questions, do the investigation, work 18 hours a day, sleep 1 or 2 hours a day, sleep on floors, etc. But there comes a time when, you have to keep it going to the next story, to the next Casey Anthony, to the next Trayvon or Zimmerman case, to the next one, because of the interest that the audience is dreaming about. That's why Jane Velez-Mitchell was so strategic in her reporting. She came out with a book. It's like her thing. She reports, then does a book. She reports, then does a book. I think is this her third book?
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It is. Yes, it is.
And it's all based on huge trials, and that's going to keep Jodi Arias. Once you go to a bookstore, if you can find one these days, or you're ordering it online or you Google it, it just keeps Jodi's name in the media, which to me seems like she adores. That's another thing. Some of the Charles Mansons, the Jodi Arias, the Casey Anthonys, they don't want to just be famous or glamorous for 15 minutes anymore. Yeah. They want years and tons. They want to be like Jack Nicholson or George Clooney or
magazine covers.
Actors. They want to be infamous.
Yeah,
that's a word. So
yeah, absolutely. And what I do appreciate, Jay, is your absolute candidness. You're being so frank. And have you seen the Jeff Daniels newsroom show on HBO?
Absolutely. I was watching it all, Sunday. It's like it's my program tuning.
It's pretty true, isn't it? It's certainly been my experience in the newsroom.
It definitely has some truth to it. And that's why I watch it. I watch it for the subtleties. That's what made me think of the Zimmerman case, actually, because they did an episode last week on the Zimmerman case and the 911 and what that tape played in the newsroom. And then they went off into their own world and how there was drama because, the characters are having conflict. Yeah. But outside, once you can separate the characters and some of the journalism, it gets interesting. And so that's what I like about it. I like the delivery. I enjoy it. And it does ring true. It makes you think how the business is operated, and some of the attraction to it. And it makes journalism exciting again because it seemed like we were getting boring. Yes. We were getting... television was losing its strength to bloggers and social medias and websites and everyone who had a 55-inch flat screen or a 60-inch flat screen or all the bells and whistles of a turbo that you had on turbo television screen on your wall. You were better off with a laptop because who watches television? It's Netflix or something else. But now, hey, I'm staying tuned to the cables all the time for information and other reasons, but I think Newsroom is bringing back some of that appeal, some of that excitement. And I think that's why also we keep these cases, we glamorize these trials that are horrific and like I said, evil and sex and scandalous. And they have these vixens in it. I mean, they just put up all the words that make you say, let me grab this remote, lock it in, stay with it, don't touch that dial. And almost make it like family viewing time. Yeah. So when you go to the pool or the barbecue or the reunion, it's like, hey, did you see what happened at the trial?
Can you believe? Yeah. Can you believe? Jay, thank you so much. Really enjoyed the frankness of this conversation. So thank you so much for joining us here. I really appreciate it.
Anytime. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for joining us here on AM 1290 KZSB, Santa Barbara News Press Radio, and Sony's Blip Television. To find out more about us, you can find us at tvguestspert.com or on Facebook. And also got a book signing this weekend at the New Renaissance Bookstore in Portland, Oregon, if you happen to be anywhere in the neighborhood. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you again soon.